Today, Mystical Sisterhood welcomes Casey Berglund to the podcast. This episode is for anyone wanting to truly be in their body and inhabit their truest of selves. So many of us were led away from a healthy and intuitive relationship with our body. Casey is here to assist us in coming back in union with ourselves through her deep and healing body of offerings. I'm excited about this conscious conversation and know that so many are going to benefit from this courageous and fascinating work. So I'll see you in the episode. Welcome back to Mystical Sisterhood. This is your host, Maureen Spielman, and I'm really excited today. I'm going to keep this bio as brief as I can so we can really optimize the conversation today. I am with Casey Berglund, and she is a TEDx speaker. She is an esteemed podcaster, founder of Worthy and Well, creator of Let Your Body Lead professional certification, amazing, and co-author of The Mind Body Way, the embodied leader's path to resilience, connection, and purpose. And I saw, Casey, that you co-authored that with, I believe, two other women. And so
Mm-hmm.
welcome here to Mystical Sisterhood. There is so much more to say in that bio, but I always lead the listener to where to find you, and they're going to learn what they're here to learn today. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm so grateful too. And a big shout out to Alicia Isaacs House, who our listener know by now. Alicia has been on twice in solo episodes and on the Mystical Sisterhood Roundtable. And so she generously said, maybe Casey would be a great fit for your audience. And just looking at everything that you're up to, I think that's certainly true. So welcome. And you are sitting in a beautiful sunny backdrop of Barcelona. And so you're bringing in some energy from that part of the world. Tell us a little bit how you came to where you are in your life right now.
Hmm. I'm going to start by sharing about how I came to where I literally physically am in my life in Barcelona. And I think it really speaks to the inner journey as well, in a way. About a year ago, my dad passed, and it was a very spiritually awakening moment. And 6 weeks after he passed, I reconnected with a man that I knew 15 years ago at a wedding in Canada. So I'm from Canada originally. I grew up there. And it was such a beautiful occurrence because my last name is Swedish. My dad's lineage is Swedish, and he always wanted to travel to Sweden, but was scared of flying because he is a cowboy farmer from rural Saskatchewan. And so 6 weeks after he passed, I reconnected with my now partner, Eric, who is 100% Swedish and a pilot. And it felt like a beautiful unfolding. And in that moment, I really received the gift of what happens when you surrender and the gift of how life-changing moments, like when you lose a loved one, how there's an alchemy and a transformation that happens in that space. And for me, there was a broken openness of my heart that I feel really allowed love in a way that I'd been yearning for, calling for, desiring for years, and waiting for the right person, the right partner. And it was really beautiful because we were friends back in university and totally forgot about each other and then reconnected. Basically, it was one of those experiences of like, wow, divine timing. And when you know, you know. And we both had this moment of like, should we stay in contact? Even though I knew that he'd been in Europe for years, that he lived in Barcelona and I was in Canada. Anyway, as they say, the rest is history. I know you told me that you're going to a baseball game in Toronto with your son. Well, our second date was at a Blue Jays game in
Oh,
Toronto.
wow.
So
Yes.
I feel like there was a beautiful connection there. Anyway, that life-changing event of my dad passing led to connecting with him. It led to me actually returning to the farm that I grew up on to spend time with my family and rebuild with my mom, and my siblings are all nearby that area for quite a few months while Eric and I did some long distance dating. And then in March of this year, I moved to Spain. And again, Spain had been calling for a while. There were so many little synchronistic moments or dots that connected. But how does this even tie into my work? My work has really been about like connecting with body wisdom and trusting the body's yes and the body's no and the body's capacity for discernment to know what decisions are aligned.
Mm,
And so, what was interesting is, when I meet new people and they imagine doing something similar to what I just did, like selling all my stuff, moving to Barcelona, moving in with a man I quote unquote just met, even though we had a foundation of friendship, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so courageous. Like, how could you do that? And like, how did that go? Whereas for people in my world who have known me for a really long time are like, this makes perfect sense because they know of my self trust. They know of my embodiment. They know of my journey and my path. And it does feel like a natural next step on my journey.
mm,
And so I always laugh when the universe offers me the very initiations that I help my clients with.
mhm.
And it is often that the biggest thing that I support clients with is them answering deeper questions like, who am I and what am I really here for now, especially after a big life change, like a passing in the family, divorce, loss, a pivot or shift in business, etc. It's amazing how those broken open moments are portals into, I sometimes call it their ultimate success or their ultimate purpose, or in many ways, their more aligned path. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll pause there, but that's how I came to Barcelona and in part a story of my work as well.
It's so beautiful. And thank you for that. Even though none of it is linear in a way, the timeline of how you have evolved into embodiment of your own. I can hear the way that you pace your conversation and you are settled in
Mm,
yourself. That is a gift, I believe, on the podcast. I feel like when we can offer that, the slowing down and the being in yourself and trusting. And so what you went through with the loss of your father last year, and you named it before we started recording, but that surrender and that
mhm.
I feel like that surrender in our lives at times, perhaps especially when the big events experiences are happening, is a key unlocker to, unlocking to our inner wisdom. Yeah.
Mm, yes, absolutely. And in maybe a more mundane example, and I'm going to speak to this from what I see in the spiritual space too, that there can be this desire to quickly move
Mhm.
any form of like dense energy in the body or quickly move a low vibrational frequency to come back to a higher frequency. And of course, when we're tapped into energy and energy work and we need to learn energy hygiene and we learn all these tools and techniques to shift our vibe, sometimes what I find is that it's actually the surrender to, let's say, anger that's felt by way of the body or deep sadness, or in my experience of navigating the process of grief, when the really heavy, I'm in bed all day because of this overwhelming sensation that feels kind of foreign. I don't recognize it as grief right away, but it's this bringing in compassion and care and kindness to that very true part of the human experience, surrendering to the experience of it, that for me is actually the fastest path to the more integrated, overall high frequency way of
Yeah.
being, way of
Hmm.
embodying light, way
Hmm.
of embodying truth. That it's not always about quickly moving through that stuff. It's about allowing it to be felt, because we are here in these human bodies to have these experiences of emotion
Yeah. Hmm.
and of joy,
Hmm.
and one doesn't come without the other, at least as part of the path toward embodying those expansive, more joyous frequencies more often.
Yeah, yes, yes. I love that honoring of what's coming. And what would you say is one of the first steps in becoming embodied for a person who may
Mm,
come to you and maybe, let's say, they know that there's an inner yearning or itch or something driving, whether or not they have that life-changing event. what's one of the first things that you teach around how to become in touch with your body?
Great question. I'm imagining that someone has just shown up for an initial call with me and we've never met before and I'm just asking some questions to get to know them. One of the first things that I would do is observe their body and reflect it back to them.
Hmm.
So, one is always in some way embodied. You're here in a body. Your soul is here in a body. So, you are embodied. You have been embodied since you're very coming into the world as a baby. And that's also important. When we come into the world, we're naturally inherently embodied. We root for milk when we're hungry and cry when we're full. There's this instinctual embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
And so the very first thing that I would do is help someone to see, either overtly or covertly, how they are already embodied.
Hmm.
I might mirror what their body is doing. I might ask a question that's like, I noticed when you answered that, you swallowed and took a deep breath. Tell me about that. So, my questions may be around someone's embodiment more than they are around what that person is saying to me. And
Mm-hmm.
that inherent modeling, that co regulation, is part of what naturally brings someone into their bodies and helps them to access how they're already doing it.
Yeah.
And what I'll also say, and this really evolved through the process of creating my TEDx talk, Let Your Body Lead, is I created an acronym to support people with the process of embodiment. And the acronym is very simple. It is body. And the B stands for breathe.
Mm.
So breathing is one of those things that we're doing whether we're aware of it or not. And bringing awareness to the breath is, I think, a really simple, easy way to begin the process of embodiment.
That's so beautiful. And thank you for pointing out that we are embodied. We naturally are embodied, but we have, if I speak from experience, as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about a few years ago. I didn't even know what embodiment meant. It wasn't a word that I think 5+ years ago people were really using. You probably were, but at the time, I think I speak for the collective. And so, when that word came across, my something I was reading or learning, I thought, what is this? And I didn't have a relationship with it yet. But I love how you noted that we are already embodied, because in a way, I feel like when we think about birthrights and what are the rights that we come in with as taking on the human body, I've never thought about this before, but being embodied or feeling embodied is a birthright. We were
Mm-hmm.
born with this ability to feel and to know and to decode in a way. And we forgot, we were conditioned out of it. And so thank you for saying that. That's a gift for me to realize, like, oh, you had to relearn, but you knew.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Exactly. It
Mhm.
is like many things in the spiritual evolution journey, a remembering.
Yeah. And when you personally started to become interested in how the body speaks to us, do you have an
Mm-hmm.
idea of why
Mm-hmm.
you were the perfect match for this teaching?
Yes. I was born embodied, like we all were. And
Mhm.
I think growing up in the country, on a farm in a rural community outside of a 200-person town, I grew up connected to nature as well. I grew up connected to food. I grew up connected to senses in a way where I do feel that some folks growing up in a really busy city may have more distraction or distortion from that natural, true nature. And so I entered into the world with the environment that in some ways would support embodiment. And then I actually experienced disordered eating when I
Mm.
was young, like a young teenager, 13, 14 years old, where I both became interested in it would like paralleled my relationship with food. So I became really interested in food from like a cooking perspective and partly by necessity as well. My mom was sick and I watched her suffer. And I think now I can say as like a sensitive empath, I just stepped in and was like, what could I do? And so I started to cook for my family of 6 and our hired hands at 12 years old. And I realized through that relationship with food, while I was also taking in more information from the outside world, I would say now from diet culture, from magazines, and experiencing stress, I started to enter into a very disembodied state using food to control my body, to change my body, to minimize my body. So this is like a natural pathway for
Mm-hmm.
many folks as we start embodied, and then disembodiment happens pretty early on, whether that's due to trauma or due to conditioning or due to, like in my case, an eating disorder. And what an extreme version of disembodiment, of not listening to my body's wisdom, ignoring hunger, ignoring my need to fuel myself, pushing through, over exercising, etc. And so that led to me actually studying and becoming interested in nutrition in university. And on the journey toward becoming a dietitian, I basically had a couple experiences where it felt like my body was really trying to save me. Like in the midst of the eating disorder, there was one evening where I was an athlete and my performance suffered in an event. It was like a track and field event. And that night I was lying in bed feeling this deep hunger inside. And it was like there was the eating disorder part coming from up high saying, like, ignore it, go to sleep. And this other voice that was like, eat. And it just felt like it came from a deeper part of me. It came from my body. And it was kind of like a maternal voice. And so I had this sort of like battle inside of my own self. And then my body, or that more maternal voice, kind of won. And I got out of bed in the middle of the night and like made myself a peanut butter sandwich.
Mm.
And this is one example
Yeah.
of not receiving support from the outside world, but tapping into a voice that came through an embodied state that helped to guide me toward a place of healing.
Mm.
So that was part of my path. And then becoming a dietitian and finding yoga while I was in my nutrition degree, and realizing in a yoga class that I was feeling my pinky toe for the first time in downward facing dog. Like, wow, like I have a pinky toe. Like, when have you ever paid attention to your pinky toe? And so I feel like it was this journey of like disembodiment, embodiment, moments of embodiment, many moments of disembodiment.
Mm.
And as I've learned in my teachings, like as an embodied leader, many of those learnings come from experience. And then I find the science or the wisdom or the technologies afterward that support what I know through experience.
Mm.
And that's definitely been my path. So I
Yeah.
worked as a dietitian, helping people with their relationship with their bodies and food for the first bit of my career. And it was really about letting go of what I learned to teach them in university and bringing their awareness back into their bodies to relearn basic things like hunger and fullness and satisfaction. And through that process of my clients reconnecting with their bodies to help heal their relationship with food,
Mm-hmm.
they were starting to connect in with, well, they were starting to leave unhealthy relationships and start businesses and connect with a deeper sense of purpose and knowing within themselves. And that was the thing that really excited me and led to me moving into more of the purpose coaching space and studying with somatic psychologists and doing embodiment work beyond nutrition
I
work.
love it. It's a stunning body of work that's developed for you that you've followed. I can see it just beginning in the career that you were led to, and then just following what just kept on unfolding, which is, I think it's always just such a beautiful example for all of us to keep opening and listening. And then that flip side of it to the internal process that you started with today, like let's start with the inner journey of what you've gone through, and that really that willingness to listen. And I just know that what you just shared is going to impact many listening today, because reflecting the separation we feel in a lot of part of our lives. I can speak for myself. I learned separation from my own body. And it
Mm-hmm.
was it was a struggle in my teens that perpetuated through 20s, 30s, 40s until I got a big diagnosis. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the wake up call for me to listen more deeply. It's been quite a journey because I was able to pair, in my case, Western medicine with the other places I was being pulled, and I feel like now talking to you, what my body knew would be healing for it, like
Mm-hmm.
acupuncture for the first time, or discovering Reiki and energy work and all the things, but that wisdom was coming from within, because just the way you were describing your experience too, in so many dis-ease or disorder, we are in the mind sort of trying to figure it out. And when we can bring it down into the body, we create a new experience of listening and learning. And oh, wow, this is a font of wisdom within me. So you kind of mentioned the physical cues of the body we have in terms of listening in, hunger. I would think like a need for movement. But what are other ways that we can lean into listening to our body, like the different levels? You mentioned emotions as well.
Yeah, that
Hmm.
would be a great place to go next. Like
Hmm.
emotions don't exist without sensation in the body. Like, what does sadness feel like in terms of sensation? You know, for me, it's often this feeling of sensitive energy coming forward to the front of my face and formulating tears. For me, anxiety feels like an elephant sitting on my chest and creating a constriction where it's hard to get a full inhale. There's a sensation to every emotional experience, and there are sensations that we wouldn't maybe have an emotion attached to. Like the body's language is beyond what we can articulate with our mouths. You know, I might feel
Yeah.
a sensation and I can't describe it with one word. It's not a
Hmm.
specific emotion, but I might use metaphor or a stream of words to try and describe it, or I might use no words and just feel it.
Yeah.
And what I think is really beautiful is both are important. Like being able to take a breath and, you know, coming back to the body acronym, actually, B is breathe, O is observe, specifically the sensation in your body. So that might be a tingling in your pinky finger. It might be a knot in your stomach. It might be a cramp in your calf. It might be the sensation of a constriction in your breathing, but there's a sensation to observe. And the key here is you can't do it wrong. So maybe you pop up in your head and you start making a story of that sensation. Just take another breath and come back into the sensation.
Hmm.
And then the D of the body acronym exercise is delay. Don't fix it, just feel it. And so this might look like creating space around the sensation. And we've talked about physical sensations, we've talked about emotional sensations. Often, when you start to be in this process, in the D, the delay, folks have access to other sensations, memories, visuals, depending on your intuition. If it's clairaudience, there might be a sound that's heard. This is what keeps me on this path, is like, whoa, we started with hunger and fullness, and now I'm learning that knowing my body makes me know my channeling capabilities. Knowing my body has opened up all of my clairs. This is so fascinating, and there's more. So the body isn't separate from my spiritual ascension journey. It's actually one of the most primary tools in it.
Hmm.
And so when we delay and train ourselves to be with sensation in the body, no matter if we would judge it as comfortable or uncomfortable or good or bad, like if we strip the judgment and we just be with the sensation,
Hmm.
inevitably wisdom bubbles up,
Hmm.
knowing bubbles up. There
Hmm.
might be a gentle inquiry about, like, what are you illuminating about what I need?
Yeah. Hmm.
And then the why of the body acronym exercise is say yes. So it's one thing to attune to the wisdom of the body or to tap into sensation. It's another to listen to it and act upon it.
Hmm.
So, in your case, with your diagnosis, and then you said naturally you were drawn to, say, Reiki and acupuncture, I would say that's you naturally being embodied and being guided via your
Hmm.
body's wisdom and via consciousness itself. I have a mentor who says consciousness is always ahead. You're
Hmm.
always being guided before it even
Hmm.
makes sense to you, right? And the
Hmm.
body plays a critical role in that pathway.
Yeah.
So the body is a gateway into so many types of sensations and so many types of wisdom. And
Hmm.
the body acronym is a very simple tool that can be used
Yeah.
to like offer up a process to attune to the body and then receive its wisdom and act upon it. Every time we act upon the body's wisdom and we get evidence that that was good for us,
Mm.
we start to trust our bodies a little more and a little more and
Gorgeous.
a little more
Yeah.
and a little more.
It's beautiful. I'm getting in touch with sitting with you, all the ways that I think myself for sure, but women as a collective have been really, really hard on our bodies and shifting perspective. First of all, having compassion, if that is you, the listener, if it's me, if it's you know, having so much compassion for having misunderstood the
Mm-hmm.
why we're in a body. And you're bringing so much beautiful, reverent language to our body. And you said it's a gateway, or I'm thinking a portal. And I've heard it referred to as our body temple, or I'm thinking today like our divine body. And wow, what a shift. And I'm positive it's part of your work that people walk in thinking this one way of thinking or being in relationship with their body and then walking out, you know, how many sessions it is. But I would imagine that you would begin to see transformation occur in a person's consciousness, you know, fairly soon after you begin the work because of all the
Mm-hmm.
revelations coming to fore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And I really appreciate what you said about, especially as women, like when I was a dietitian, most of my clients were women who had
Mm,
dieted for decades or been in at war with their bodies. And this piece about compassion,
mm,
like acceptance, compassion, and love within ourselves, within our bodies, is what offers acceptance, compassion, and love outside of ourselves. So it's like we might not be able to control the wars in the world, but we can control the war that might be happening within our own bodies and create a reverent, more
mm,
peaceful, bit by bit, or in
mm.
Spanish, poco a poco. I'm just learning. I just had a Spanish lesson before this, but it's stuck with me. It's like bit by bit offering a sort of neutrality to the body to
Okay.
start.
Mhm.
Instead of fighting it, can
Mm,
I just like, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable here. Okay. Can I just leave it at that and not then judge it for feeling uncomfortable and needing to change and fix? Can we offer a neutrality first and a bit of acceptance and then a bit of compassion and then a bit of love and then reverence and then like divinity and
mm.
holiness? And you know what I mean? Like we start where we are and we work with our relationship with our bodies bit by bit.
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm thinking a lot about how this work could really be beneficial for families. You may not have
Mm-hmm.
known that I was going to go there, but I just feel, you know, part of my background is in conscious parenting, which I
Mm-hmm.
always adore the work. And there's so many places in the ways that our generation was parented and generations before us, where conversations in general were not part of growing up, maybe more on the farm
Yes.
for you. But for me,
Yes.
we had 6 kids in my family, so it was about order and being in line and playing your role really well. But I think it's a really important conversation that we have within families with children to just be able to speak on our bodies in a new enlightened way that invites their experience and you know allows the parent as teacher but the child as guide. But I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
Totally. And there's so much impact to be had. I'm
Yes.
thinking of a client of mine who's a mom of two girls, and she took the Let Your Body Lead professional certification. So really, there's a methodology that combines embodiment tools, coaching skills, wisdom from ancient traditions, and science to equip people with creating transformational change in the clients they're meant to serve, the colleagues that they work with. And what I didn't expect, but I should have really, is how much of an impact it would have on families.
Mhm.
Like she just started to share with her daughters different invitations to explore their bodies. And just
Mm,
through her own awareness of building a different relationship with her body, it's like she's modeling a
mm,
kinder presence, a kinder embodiment. And recently there was something that came up in her world where someone at school had called one of her daughters fat. And it was this open, like, invitation to explore what to do with that. How does
Mhm.
that feel? And
Mhm.
again, like, delay, don't fix it, just feel it. Like, how can there be conversation
Mm.
around some of these touchy subjects that
Yeah.
could make or break someone's self-confidence or self-esteem? And
Yes.
it really, like, sparked something in her
Ooh.
around really wanting to create children's books. And
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
have a secret dream of creating like a body literacy program for kids
Ooh.
that maybe we'll connect on at another time.
Yes, I love that. What a beautiful
Hmm.
vision. I am going to say that when, across this summer, when I reached out to you to interview, you were in the midst of moving and setting up your life right now. And so we
Hmm.
waited a couple of months, which was perfect. It's always perfect timing. And when I reached out to you, an email came back to me. And it said, you can share with the audience sort of what your thought process in creating it. But it was a really beautiful email of, if I don't get back to you, I check my email, this many times a week, or however, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was basically, I felt like you really creating the life you want to lead around how you utilize your energy, how important rest and relaxation and resourcefulness in your energy body
Hmm.
is. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think it was really
Mm.
impactful.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an automated email. I guess as someone who I really care about quality service
Mm,
and care and
mhm.
humans, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And as such, there is this one part of me that is like, I want to respond to things quickly, and I want to, and also as women, it's like we're trained to like do it all. And that email came from a place of really wanting to create a work structure that
Yeah.
supported my beingness and also my priorities to support my clients well, etc. And in the world of distraction with social media and notifications and pings of emails, it can be challenging. And so for me, having an email that goes out that says, I received your email,
Mm-hmm.
here's how I respond, here's questions you might be asking, and answers to those questions.
Yeah.
It, for me, gives me a moment to pause and to be more conscious and intentional about communication and administration in particular. So
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you sharing the feedback that it
Mm.
impacted you in some way.
Yeah, I thought, ooh, I like this woman because it was just a great example of you put yourself first. But I hadn't even thought until you started to describe it that it was the email that came back to me. Whoever is reaching out to you, it's a connection point. So most of
Mm-hmm.
us will have that email sitting in our inbox and maybe we feel bad. It's in our mind. Ooh, I didn't get back to her yet or whatever. But then, it kind of satisfies you on that soul level. Like, that you've responded in a soft and warm way that you want to. So it's so intentional and mindful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Casey, as we're kind of circling towards the end of our time together today, which I know is just going to be a first meeting, I just know this. What are you feeling in the world right now? And what do you feel is emerging as maybe an invitation for those who have not, or maybe have put themselves to the side, or just what are you seeing? I know that you're a healer, you're a channeler, you're a visionary, you hold a lot of wide open energetic space, but what's coming to you that might be beneficial for the listener?
Don't discount the power of self-awareness.
Mm.
It is really easy, it can be easy to have energy pulled toward American politics, wars, your best friend's neighbor's social media account with the reels that are going viral, or anything outside of ourselves. It can be easy to see what's happening out in the world that can feel like
Mhm.
dissonant
Mhm.
and feel powerless to what you can do out there. And my message is, don't discount the quiet power of self awareness, which includes body awareness.
Mm.
and the power of embodiment in impacting every single human being that you connect with. It's literally science. Our bodies and our nervous systems are walking like energy beings, and our state impacts every other living creature that we come in contact with, even if it's not coming in close contact with. So my presence as a grounded, embodied being has the power to create groundedness and embodiment without speaking a single word.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And if we were grounded in our bodies, AKA dropped into our hearts, and dropped into not just our hearts, embodiment connects you with your deeper purpose, your innate gifts, your individuality, your uniqueness. If you're grounded in the power of you, there's less of a need to compete. There's less of a need to prove. There's less of a need to fight. Think about the power of that. If we're secure, grounded human beings, the ripple that we create is secure groundedness, where we're each a very beautiful piece of the puzzle. We're literally God incarnate in bodies. We're literally here to be embodied individuals, little pieces of the puzzle that fit together to paint a picture of divinity. Let's not forget our piece of the puzzle. Or be distracted by all of the other pieces of the puzzle that aren't in harmony with a way of being deeply embodied. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, it was perfect. And I'm grateful for it. And I'm feeling into it. And for the listener, feel into that. And how does it feel? And how do you receive that? And listening to any messages or knowings that are coming to you. They are true for you. They are accurate. They are real. They are more reality than a lot of what we see on the outside. So, Kasey, where might the listener find you? I know there's a few resources that you have in terms of website. And can you just name whatever you'd like to name?
Sure. Letyourbodylead.com is my website. And there's a Begin Here tab that has my TEDx talk, the Purpose Map podcast, other resources that are great places to start. And I also really love connection, especially as a new being to a new country. I'm just like feeling the reverence for human connection. So email me, send me a note, let me know how this impacted you. And I'd love to connect in that way. So Kasey at worthyandwell.com is
beautiful.
my email.
I'm thinking of my one other guest, Susie Pearl, who's on the island of, I know it said Ibiza. Ibiza?
Oh,
yes. And she spoke on near-death experience, which is very interesting. And when it comes to bodies. So thank you, Kasey. It will not be the last. Thank you to the listener for being here. I hope you got so much through it. And I have a feeling that so many stayed until the end today. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mystical Sisterhood. To learn more about my one-on-one coaching programs or join the Mystical Sisterhood membership, visit maureenspielman.com or mysticalsisterhood.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next episode.